Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Business Method Podcast. Today, we have a very special guest that we get the fortunate opportunity to chat with. He started out at the ripe old age, you guys, of 9 years old in rural Texas, working at his family's grocery business. During his teenage years, he spent most Saturdays and summers sweeping the floors and learning the ins and outs of the business until after graduating college, where he then worked the night shift, loading trucks for a year and a half. He worked in the family business for nearly 5 decades, running it as a CEO. And for 30 of those years, he built that company up into a wholesale grocery business worth $19 billion. In 1990, he sold the McLane Company to Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart, and he became the vice chairman of Walmart. In 1992, he decided he needed a new challenge and he purchased the Houston Astros baseball team, eventually taking the team to the World Series and building them a new stadium. His name is Drayton McLane, and he's on the podcast today. Drayton, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing terrific. It's a beautiful day in Central Texas. It's going to be 82 degrees here.
That's not too
So
bad.
Minnesota will let you come down and spend the winter with us.
Winters in Texas aren't bad at all. I lived down the road in Austin for a couple years, and
Yep.
except for those few storms that we would have on occasion where it'd wipe out the power. But other than that, it wasn't too bad down there.
Well, it's a great place to live, but in my business career, I built grocery distribution centers all over the United States and international. So I traveled a great deal, and that's the beauty of America and the world. We
Yeah.
we develop businesses over wide geographical areas.
Absolutely. So you have a good friend and I have a good friend, Paul Reuter, and we just like to give a shout out to him for connecting us. And he told me something really interesting about you. He said, when you used to meet somebody, you would write down their details on a note card, and then you would send a follow-up letter on Friday after meeting them, telling them why it was great to meet them and how you appreciated getting to know them a bit. And I would imagine that this was a really great way for a person to build an incredibly well-connected network. Before the ages of social media, now people do that on occasion with Facebook and LinkedIn and all the things. But before we dive into the interview, I'd like to know, I want to hear in your own words, why did you do that? And then what did you get out of that?
Well, the note cards were these notes right here, a
Oh, wow.
card that I put in my pocket. And then as I met people, I would either get their business card or write their name down. And what really runs business is relationships.
Yeah.
And as you extend your relationship, you know people in various businesses, and it's amazing as you develop as a leader, these come back to you, and you harvest these relationships.
Yeah.
And that's what I think the podcast that you do here is expressing ideas, and so this is where in the era we've had in the last 3 years, work from home is not going to work long term because you're sitting home isolated by yourself. And what really makes business go is be around people that really excite you, give you big ideas, and you get charged up to move forward.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. Real quick. Have you been on a podcast before?
I've been on a number of different podcasts before.
Have you?
So
Okay. I was wondering if this was your first.
people ask me, so, what'd you say?
I was wondering if this was your first one.
No, I've done a number of them, and people ask me why you do this here. I'm 86 years old, so they say, why do you do that? I'm going to learn more from this experience than anybody that's in your audience is going to learn. So I learn by the questions and the thoughts and having to really re-examine what you've done and why you've done it. And then the most important thing, where are you headed?
Yeah. Well, I think that says a lot because it seems like the people that live the longest and have the most youthful lives are the ones always learning. And tell us real quick, like why at 86 years old are you still wanting to learn?
Well, just of what you're saying there, I tell everybody you have to have a reason to get up every morning. And I get up about 4:30 in the morning so I can get a head start, and I get to the office about 7:15, and I stay until 4 or 5 that day. And it's invigorating to be around people like yourself, that you can ask questions of them, or they give you questions, or you get a joint idea where you're going to work together. So teamwork is what's really, really good, and where you can assist and help people. My motto is we are our brother's keeper. And
Mm.
so if we can help other people enhance their lives, or others can provide services to other people, then that's what really makes your life rich. And so I think just interacting with them, and even in the grocery business, I was in the grocery distribution business. We bought from big manufacturers like Procter and Gamble, General Mills, General Foods, all these big companies, and then we would redistribute it to supermarkets and convenience stores and restaurants all over the United States. And I would even invite our competitors to come see us, and I'd take them to our facilities. And they thought they were learning from me. I'd learn from them. I'd
Take
figure
it.
them out.
You got to keep your friends close and your enemies closer, right? Is that the old saying? Take us through that mindset though, like, because a lot of people, I think, get hesitant about sharing their secrets with enemies, even being transparent. Like they're scared or worried about being transparent about their financial numbers or strategies they use in their business. What was your logic behind inviting your competitors into your own facility?
You would get to know them. And part of my strategy is there's no real secrets in business. And people think, well, now that we're in the computer age that we're in, and there's no secrets, but there were no secrets back in the 60s when I first got started. They could figure out what you were doing, and they could try to emulate them. And one of the reasons I said that our competitors, we use technology, this was back in the 60s and 70s, much faster than anybody else at that time. And our executives said, well, you're showing our competitors our technology. I said, great, because they're going to spend the next 2 to 3 years to get where we are today. And by the time they get this done in 3 years, we'll be way down the road. We will have gone way past what we're doing today. And so they're still stuck with trying to emulate what we're already doing. So don't be afraid that business is not that secret.
I like that. So we're going to open it up to audience questions here in a bit. But before we do, I want to ask you, because you're a wealth of knowledge. And I think one thing that really stood out that I learned about you is that your parents had you working at 9 years old. Now, in the 40s, in rural Texas, that probably wasn't too uncommon. But take us back to that. At 9, I think it was probably 1945 for you. Take us back into the early days of you as a kid, and what was your parents, your father and your grandfather having you do?
I grew up in a very small town, Cameron, Texas. It had about 5,000. So everybody knew everyone. And my dad had the largest business in the town. He had about 62 or 3 employees, and he was in the wholesale grocery business. And my dad learned from his dad, and they both had a great work ethic. I had no idea why he was doing it to me, but when school was out at the end of May, he'd let me stay home and play with my friends for a week. And then the next Monday, he would turn the light on in my room about 6 o'clock in the morning and said, we're going to leave in 30 minutes to go to the office. And I remember the first time or two, I got up and turned the light off after he left. He came back and said, don't ever do that again. So anyway, he was teaching me a work ethic. I was not doing anything sophisticated, and really, was not doing anything complicated, but it was just being around. These were working class, these were blue collar people that were working in a warehouse. And I would be around those people, and I learned how to understand them. And so my father was teaching me a work ethic. He was teaching me to be around people and to express myself and to be comfortable around these people. And I think that's why later in life, when I was an adult, it was easy that I had been around these type of people for a long period of time.
Okay. For the people that have built billion-dollar companies, we've had about 15 or so of them on the show. And I always ask them the same thing. It may take a little thinking on your end. So apologize for the challenging question here. If you were going to take, your time from starting work as a teenager or so to the time you sold McLane Company, um, and you divided that into chapters, what would you call each chapter and why?
Well, when you were just working as a teenager or in a young adult as you were going to college, you weren't in the strategy of the business and dealing with the executive levels. You were working in the routine of the business. So you were learning that. Later, when I got out of college, I had to come to my dad and ask him for a job. I've got to give him a lot of credit. He never said, "Hey, son, I want you to come into business with me," or "I want you to be my partner." He never mentioned to me. And so when I got out of college, I came down to see my mother and dad, and I told him that I would like to go in business and be working with him. And so I had to really apply for the job. And then I was shocked. I thought I was going to be my dad. He had about 70 something employees then. And I thought I was going to be his assistant. And he told me I would be on the third shift at night loading trucks. I said, I've been to college for 6 years. And he said, that doesn't qualify you for anything we do. He said, you need to learn this business from the ground up. And I appealed to my mother, and she said, "No, it's going to be between you and your dad." So I started off, and I worked for over a year and a half, working on the third shift. That was the best thing he could have done for me, but I didn't like it at the time. And then after I'd done that, I surely didn't go to the office there. I worked in other parts of the distribution and the transportation. And you learn the people, you learn the systems that they were doing. And that's what I tell young people. I make talks at university. They said, "Where should I start in business?" And I said, "Whatever company you go to work for, tell them you want to start at the very bottom of that business. And you want to work up it with your education and your experience. You can zoom. And you learn how the bit, and you'll see the good things they're doing, and you see the bad things they're doing." So that's the first phase of initially getting out of school and learning a business and learning how the steps in the business and what it takes to be successful. So that's certainly the beginning stages. And then trying to move forward is more as an executive is certainly the next step in a business. And that takes 2 or 3 years. And I just see rambunctious people that have all kind of degrees, particularly MBAs, and they say they want to be the executive vice president. They don't have a clue. and
Yeah.
and you need to learn the steps along the way.
Yeah.
A lot can be learned from looking at the U.S. Army, military, the Navy, whatever. You can go to West Point and boy, they train you immaculately. But you start as a second lieutenant, just like the guy that was in ROTC at Baylor starts as a second lieutenant. And It's amazing to see how they rise up. And so you got to go through the steps. You see, this guy's so smart. Yeah, but don't get him ahead. He doesn't have the background. I can run circles in business around people that just didn't have the experience in the business.
Yeah.
I love when people hired hot shots in their business and came in here. We could outsmart them every time.
That's something that I heard a guy speaking that buys a lot of businesses, and before he buys a business, he goes in and he works for that business he's thinking about buying, and he starts at the bottom. He doesn't start at the top, and he starts sweeping the floors and taking out the trash and working with the employees. And it's an incredible strategy because it's very intelligent to do. And you said MBAs don't have a clue, and I can kind of vouch for that because I have an MBA. And that was not the end of my education. Not even, I wouldn't even call that close to the beginnings.
That's why I said, "Dad, I've got 6 to college. I got an MBA from Michigan State. It doesn't qualify you for anything. That was the best advice he ever gave me.
It's very true. What do you think about young entrepreneurs now today that don't even go to college? They just skip right over and start businesses. Like we've talked to quite a few of them. What's your thoughts on that?
I had built McLane Company, and I was about the 67th employee, and we built the business and we grew it. We built a new distribution center away from this small town in a larger town, Temple, Texas town. Today it's about 85,000. Then it was about 40,000, 30,000. And we built it, and for 32 consecutive years, we grew the business 30% per year for 32 consecutive years. But we developed a lot of executives. The smartest person, when we merged with Walmart, we had 16,000 employees. The smartest person in the McLane Company, his name was Neil McCarty. He never went to college. He just was intuitive, and he was a deep thinker, and he saw the steps and the strategy. And so don't label people by how many degrees they got or what university they went to. It doesn't matter. It's the guy that can really relate and has a niche for running a business. So don't get hung up on degrees.
Yeah. Drayton, we're gonna have some people come in and ask you some questions really quick. Now I know most of these people, so I think they'll be nice to you. But you guys don't pick on Drayton any. But if they do,
that's what we're here for.
If you do, you poke them right back. Okay, first person up, Adam Anderson. Come on in, turn on your video and your microphone, and have at it.
Have at it. I love that. All right. Drayton, this has been fantastic. My question is around being the chair of the board. So I've got two companies that I chair, and I feel like when the CEO shows up for a board meeting, we hear him lecture, and then we're almost like looking for something he's doing wrong. I'd love some guidance on how do you help CEOs? How do you be a better chair of the board? And then how do you use a board to help a company rather than just be some kind of compliance entity?
I'm not the biggest believer in boards. And I'm a big believer in that CEO, that entrepreneur that knows how to run a business. I thought my view of a board, and I'm on a lot of charity board, but my view of a board is to set the goals of the business. What are you going to do? The second one is set the values. I'm big on having noble values, whatever you do. So the goal of a board is to set what's the business, what's the purpose of the business, what are the values of the business, and how are you going to measure the CEO? And then the last one is to hire and fire the CEO. That's the most important thing the board does. And they can monitor through monthly reports. I was on a board one time, a public board, and they had several manufacturing plants around the United States. They required that a board member had to go and spend 3 days at 3 different manufacturing plants every year. Not just show up for a board meeting and say, now, what is it we do here? And so that board, and I thought that was very effective, that a board member had to go to, if it's a retailer, go to the retail store. But they had to go to 3 manufacturing plants. This company had a big company, and spend 3 days there. And not sit in the boardroom at that plant, but to go through the plant. And then when they had a board meeting, they would have the board member say, now tell us what you saw in our operation since the last board meeting. So it's not just the financials you've got to do. Hiring, firing the CEO, setting the goals, how you're going to measure him. And, most companies say we're going to measure what's the financial, but how are they doing with their employees? The employees are the greatest asset you got, and you don't put them on the balance sheet. So how is he doing with the employees? The employees like it. And so the board, and then set the strategy. and the values, and then hold him accountable for those. So most of the board meetings, the really good ones, don't last more than a couple of hours every quarter. They're not running into the details of it. That's what you're hiring that CEO to do.
It's fantastic.
You're
Thank you.
you're also paying him big bucks.
That's the idea, right? Let's get what we paid for.
You bet, and hold him accountable. And then one last one is, you see businesses grow by a strong leader, but is he developing leaders behind him? I've just seen too many companies that were started by an entrepreneur. He's the CEO, and he really doesn't have much talent behind him. And my motto that I used in McLane Company and I've tried to on boards is, what happens when the CEO gets sick?
That's a great question.
We get too wrapped up in the dynamic CEO that's really growing that business. And the reason I did that I said we grew our company 30% per year. And this was about 6 or 7 years. I hired a really good consultant, a leadership consultant out of New York City, and I had him go see 2 or 3 of our distribution centers. And he come to our office, and I asked him, I said, well, you spent a week trying to evaluate these divisions you went to, and what do you think of us? And that was his expression. I throw it so in the mill. He said, don't get sick. I said, what does that mean? He said, exactly what I said. I said, is that a compliment or an insult? He said, it's an insult. He said, it's all around you. Fortunately, I had good health, but businesses are vulnerable sometimes.
All right, Adam, you good?
Yeah, I had a second question, but I don't know if I'm supposed to hold that to later in the line.
Let's circle back so we can get through a few others real quick. We'll keep you on the list.
All right, that doesn't hurt my feelings. That's fine.
Is that a compliment or an insult? Okay, Thomas is up next. Thomas, you want to pop in and turn on your video and microphone, say hello to Drayton?
I would love to. First of all, hello from Southeast Asia. It's around 0:30 at night, and I'm really pleased to be here and to listen.
Wow, you look sharp.
Yeah, at least I still have my shirt on. So my question is on fears. Are there any fears or anxieties you have regarding anything, your life, the world? And if so, what are they and why? And how do you deal with them?
I've never had, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, so I don't get involved. I've tried to I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to build a great business. I wanted to have a good family. And then I wanted to have my Christian values, which were so important to me. And so I made sure I did all those. I worked hard Monday through, I even worked Saturday morning till noon. But when I had 2 boys, and when I went home at noon, I told my wife, I'll manage them over the weekend. And so I got involved and certainly went to school events. And then we certainly went to church and Bible study on Sunday. So I had distinct parts of it. I don't think you can be just a businessman, or you're not going to be a great businessman if you're all wrapped up in your family, or you're all wrapped up in social events. And so I tried to live an uncomplicated life. I see too many executives that are successful in their business, and they got a very complex life. They're socially, my wife and I we live in a town then of about 40,000. We did not spend a lot of time in social events. That's a mistake. So it was focused on the business, focus on my family, and focus on my religious life.
All right, thank you. Is there still, you said you had no fears really ever, but is that really a thing, like not having fears, or are there any fears that you could potentially see, even if you think at life on a bigger scale that goes beyond your personal life?
If you are going to be a good entrepreneur and you really go out and do things, you got to have immense confidence. And we had one distribution center here in Texas, and all of a sudden I said, we need to build a distribution center in Denver, Colorado. I didn't even know legally how to do business in another state. And I just go after things boldly, and be honest. Don't hide anything. Be extremely open. And I would not do anything that would violate my integrity and my honesty. And can I be a little simple to you then? I told our executives I had three things that I was requiring them to do. We're bold. You can never do anything illegal or immoral, or you go to jail. If you're going to invest in something, just say you have $100. If you invest in it, don't bet the store on it. If you only have $100, bet $30 on it. And then if it blows up and blows your hair off of you and blows your shirt off of you, you're in great shape. You hadn't gone against the law legally or morally. You still got $70 left. You only lost 30. And then you learned a great deal. So I'd make them sit down and tell me in great detail what they learned from that experience. So if you do that, just go into things and then I'd say, we don't know everything about this, but we'll correct it as we go.
Nice.
I love charging into things.
All right. We're going to move on to the next question. Thank you, Thomas. The next is Max Levy. Max is calling in from Barcelona, but he's from Houston, Texas, your neck of the woods.
I know, Max.
You know, Max, do you want to turn on your camera and microphone and come and say hi?
Good to see you again, Drayton.
Wow, Max, you run off. Is that
Yeah.
Or are you the son of Max Levy from Houston?
Max, you're on mute, buddy.
Sorry about that. Good to see you again, Drayton. I brought a little bit of the sun with me this time.
Are you from the grocery supply family?
No, actually, but I do see their suite at the rodeo every year.
Oh, okay. Well, the grocery supply family was the Levitt family in Houston. And I knew they were one of our fierce competitors, and we were big buddies.
No, unfortunately, I'm not in the grocery game, but I do want to pick your brain and get a little bit of your wisdom here from Barcelona. But first and foremost, though, I do want to thank you for contributing to our Houston Astros franchise and helping us get to another championship. It's always great to spend another year on top.
Okay.
Yeah. So, question for you: if you had to start your life over again without your family's grocery company, how would you get back to $1 billion?
Find out some business that really interests you. And in my view, don't say, I'm going to be an investor. How I would do it is find something that really interests me and I'd get excited about it and I get deeply involved in it and learn that business from the ground up. Go visit all the competitors I could get in and find out how they're doing their business, and then get into the business and then start trying to add value. And the main thing is to add to your executives and to your customers confidence that, trust me, we're going to go places. And I told a lot of our executives, I sometimes didn't pay them a great deal of money. I said, there's going to be a gold mine someday and we're going to get there. And they'd say, where is that? I said, I have no idea, but we'll get there. But it took 30-something years. But the get in the business and learn the business. Don't invest in anything or get involved in something unless you're willing to get in it and totally understand that business and redesign it.
Yeah, I love that.
Can I say one more thing? The other caller asked about being bold. As you have success as an entrepreneur, you gain confidence. And don't get too overconfident. But in 1992, as the last caller said, I bought the Houston Astros. They were a Major League Baseball team. I had been to 3 major league games in my entire life. I didn't know things about that. And I remember the commissioner said, "What qualifies you to do?" I said, "Well, I'm a quick learner. Get in the business, talk to the people." I went to George Steinbrenner and other people that had been in the baseball business for a long time and just learn from them. Don't be afraid to get into something that you don't understand. Take it a few steps at a time and learn the business. I got into it and devoted full time to it for about 3 years. So don't be afraid to take a big chance.
Amen to that. Anything else, Max?
Yeah, I also I had a couple other questions, but I don't want to cut some people off.
Let's dive into a couple more and we'll circle back to you and Adam both, because I think you both had a couple more questions. So next up, Tim Joyner. Tim is calling in from South Carolina. Tim, hop on, turn on your video and microphone and say hello.
Drayton, it's Tim Joyner from Greenville. It's nice to meet you. Thanks for making yourself available to us today.
Well, thank you.
You
I
talked
like your
about
airplane in the background.
Thank you. I aspire to own that airplane someday. I don't have it yet, but it's on my list.
Have goals. I did that too.
That's right. Good. Hey, you obviously have grown your wealth dramatically from there's a big difference between where you are today and where you were. And I wonder what kinds of changes that's made in your day-to-day life, like in your friends and in the ways that you spend your time and the kinds of things that you spend your money on. Like, how has that wealth changed you and how have you handled all that growth?
I talked earlier, I write down things and put on a card, and I can quote some of these. But first, figure out before you get into a business, figure out what your values are. What do you want to look like 30 years from now as a human being? And set down your values and what you want to do and what kind of business you want to be in and how you want people to look at you. I bought the Houston Astros. Houston is 185 miles from here. And I never moved to Houston. I know when I first bought them, the leadership in Houston said, "You're moving to Houston." I had 2 sons in high school. And I said, "Well, they're in high school. When they get out of high school, maybe I'll move to Houston." They got out of high school, and I said, "Well, they're in college. When they get out of college, I'll move." And they got out of college, and I still didn't move. I identify with, related to the people. I had an apartment in Houston, spent a lot of time, knew thousands of people in Houston. But I still related to Temple, Texas. You are who you are. And I've tried to stay the same, still go to the same church. I've been married for 50 years, and I still have, I'm getting older, but so I got to get younger friends now. But I still have mainly the friends that I had before. Don't let success spoil you. One of the things that was important to me all the way through my career, I had mentors. And if I could just share this with you, and I would encourage you all to get mentors. And how I selected a mentor, my rule was they had to be smarter than I was. And that was easy to do. So I could find it. I wasn't very smart. So most people want to be around somebody that they're very comfortable with and they can take over and all that. I like to be around people that just scare me to death and really talk to me. So I got mentors. They had to be smarter than I was. They could not be any relationship to me. They couldn't be an aunt or uncle or that, because those people tell you what you want to hear. If you want a mentor, you need to get somebody that really tells you, said, "Where did you get those crazy socks you got on? Those are stupid." You need a mentor that tells you. So they couldn't be in relation, and then they had to be where they could do that. So I had a series of mentors over the years, and I would go see them. And I had one of them that was really great. He was an intellectual, lived in Chicago. His name was Michael O'Connor, and I'd go see him 3 or 4 times a year. And And can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yeah, all good.
Yeah, there we go. And when I go see him, and he'd say, don't bring an agenda. You're going to come up here and you're going to want me to try to solve your problems. And that's not what we're here for. We're here to expand your mind and get you to see things that you haven't seen before. But one of his themes were, he said, 85 to 90% of the people that become successful lose. Said, look at politicians, look at ministers, look at entertainers, look at baseball players or whoever. They get all absorbed by themselves. Said, stay grounded, be who you were before all this happened. And I like your airplane. I did that. I set goals I wanted to achieve. That's great. That gets you up early in the morning. That's how I got getting up at 7 or 4:30 in the morning. I set goals to work for. Don't let success change you. Look how many business people make a lot of money, and they've been divorced now 4 times, and they got all kind of messes. They're in there. Make it simple, make it uncomplicated. Stay who you are.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Can I just ask one quick follow-up question to that?
Sure.
Go ahead.
You talked about having same friends. That's one of the particular things that I'm interested in, because as my business has grown, it just not that I'm better than they are, but the kinds of problems that I have are very different from the problems of the people that I went to school with, the people that I've been friends with for a long time. The kinds of opportunities open to me are different. The things that interest me are different. And I've just found it challenging to maintain those friendships just because our interests have changed. So do you have any advice? How have you
Try to stay
your
grounded and get down. I have a lot of friends here, and they want to talk about raising cattle, and they want to talk about, routine high school football. So I'll talk about that with them. So you need to stay grounded there, but get some people that stir you up. I had another consultant one time said, you try to make everybody happy. He said, it's really good. You ought to get really mad about somebody or someone else, or you need business problems that really stir you up. He said, that's when the intellectual capacity takes over, and do that. Can I tell you one other thing he told me one time too? He said, once a month, you should have lunch with somebody you really, really don't like.
That's a good one.
He said, you don't like, or you like him personally, but you don't like his ideas. And he said, as a leader, you get narrow as you get successful. You get narrow, and it gets narrower and narrower and narrower. Look at our society today. And he was telling me this 30 years. He said, as you get successful, you get narrow, you get your people, you're around narrow, and your thoughts are narrow, and that. He said, go out once a month and talk to somebody you really, really don't like. He said, it teaches you understanding, and he said, you're going to get some pretty darn good ideas. So
I love that.
Can I make that recommendation to you?
Tim, I'm going to hold you to that. I know Tim pretty well,
like
so we're gonna see you do that, Tim.
I like it. Thank you.
You got to expand your thoughts.
Absolutely.
You get narrow with success.
It's a really
advice.
good. It's a really good point. It's a really good point. Up next, we have Sebastian Marshall and Drayton. I believe Sebastian's calling in from Singapore. I think that's where he lives. Sebastian, go ahead and turn on your video and microphone and say hello.
Yeah, I'll be in California tomorrow, but it's 2 a.m. I'm in Tokyo right now. Our CTO is married to a Japanese national, and so they're out here. They had a baby, so I was coming out here to work with him. And but I'll be back in the States tomorrow. Hey, thanks for doing this, and thank you for inviting me, Chris. It's been a wonderful time. One thing that's really intriguing, you've been in different businesses that had probably such different personality types in them. When you're doing wholesale, retail, you got logistics people. When you're trying to hire executives, managers, specialists in these different fields, how'd you balance the mix of like hard factors this person's got this credential, has succeeded in this way, put up these numbers. This person was a good salesperson. Would they be a good sales chief? With like soft factors, you know, this person's easy to work with, this person's a good leader, and so on and so forth. And then has that changed over the eras? Was that different? Did you need to look for different stuff in the 60s than the 80s, than the 90s, and in different decades? Are you seeing people are different? You're looking for people that either fit in with the era or go against the era. I bet you got a wealth of insight on this and so many different fields and across such a long time period of success. It's just very, very interesting.
You're talking about how to select leaders.
That's right.
I see it's two ways to look at it. If you're an entrepreneur and you're starting a small business, don't hire a guy that's 50 years old that's been in that business. I hire young people and I teach them what I want to do. If they've been in business, they bring a lot of thoughts of their own. So I would hire young people out of college, or just people. I found truck drivers. I thought, boy, that guy can do a whole lot more than he thinks he can do. And so as an entrepreneur, I developed talent. And I remember we were doing $1 billion, and I was in my late 40s or early 50s. And most of them were in their 30s running the company. We brought these guys up from the bottom, and they helped set the goals. They helped set the routines of what we were doing. And we did that. When you bring somebody in from that's highly experienced into an organization, he's going to want to change it to fit his way of doing things. So I understand if you're buying a business and you don't have the time or you're not going to run it, you do need to get the experienced executive, but he's going to mold it from his experience. But if you're an entrepreneur and you're going to build companies, hire young people.
Nice. Anything else, Sebastian?
Yeah, anything particular you look for? You know, is it you looking for a lot of conscientiousness, for the person's like always on time? You're looking for some raw ability, unique ideas, how well they work with you? What would you say the top factors are that you're looking for when you're identifying people like that?
People that have skills, and particularly, I remember, boy, I'm very orderly. Boy, I got everything programmed, and so I'm guilty of trying to hire people that do that. But you do need to hire in your organization some that kind of rock the boat every day. I remember we were building our company and we were doing about 200 or 300 million, and we didn't have a good accounting system. So I hired a really sharp CPA, and he worked for us for over 25 years. I don't think he ever really knew what we did, but he was great in accounting systems and control systems and audits and borrowing from the bank. He was good in that, but everybody said if Sandy ever figured out what we did, he'd really be good. But Sandy stirred us up. So again, would try look for people that have a great work ethic, that want to be somebody. So many people just get happy. They're happy who they are and where they go. I tell people I want to get somebody that just never really satisfied where he is. And I'm that way. I'm never satisfied with where I am. And how do we make this better? And in the food logistic industry, it was pretty staid, and we did creative, and we did a bunch of things that didn't work, but we did them and got out of it and readjusted. People like that. People like to be in a company where you're doing creating, you're on the move, and they can rise up. Just one other thing is entrepreneur. When you're doing 100 million, this guy was a good executive for you. All of a sudden, you're doing 300 million, and this guy just can't move up. Then you've got to have the courage. I've seen too many people keep moving this guy up, and now they're doing 500 million, and his competency just doesn't grow. So you have to do one of two things. Explain to that person that you're going to have to bring somebody in over him, and he needs to stay at a responsibility at this level of 100 million, and we got to bring somebody in, or either dismiss it. And that's not easy to do, to say to some executive that worked really hard with you for 5 years and to say, we're going to have to move someone in over as we grow the business. That's hard to do, but you got to have the courage. If you're going to win, you win with talent and bringing or recognizing that you rise above. In Texas, high school football is a big deal. And I remember my oldest son was a freshman in high school, and there were over 120 people who came out for high school football as a freshman. When he graduated as a senior, 17 lettered on his team. So it went from 120 to 17. They kept moving up because they had the talent and the skills to do it. Business is the same way. As businesses rise, you've got to get better talent. So you have to have the courage to go to people and say, you're a good person. You were great when we were at this level. We're going to keep you there, but we're going to bring some more talent in. It's hard to do.
Nice. Thank you, Sebastian. Up next, we have Stuart Townsend. Stuart, if you want to pop in, Stuart has a question about going from retail business to owning a baseball team. Turn on your mic and video, Stuart, and say hello.
Hello. Hi, Drayton. Great to meet you.
Hi, Stuart.
I'm from sunny England. Everybody else seems to be in more exotic places. So, or rainy England. Yeah, as Chris was saying, it's interesting. You've grown a national retail business and then moved to owning and running the Astros. So were there any lessons or any components from that business that you brought into the baseball team that you could share with us, or vice versa?
No, as you go into another business, I've gotten in several different businesses, and that was a baseball team, but we'll use baseball as an example. I couldn't bring executives from the grocery business that were very talented and really great and put them into baseball. So I had to get into the baseball, and I hired, first thing I did was 2 or 3 retired baseball executives. And I would come in I'd say to one I hired, his name was Tal Smith. And I got in a room with him. I said, tell me all that I need to know about baseball. He said, you only need to know 3 things. I said, what? He said, you only need to know 3 things. He said, baseball is pitching, speed, and defense. I said, what? And he was right. That's how you get great teams. He had it boiled down to three things. So get in a business and don't try to translate, because this guy was good in the grocery business, you're going to put in the manufacturing business. It doesn't work. If you go into a new business, you're going to have to get people that really understand the business you're getting into and can give you thoughts and ideas.
Makes sense. Goes back to your point as well about not bringing, people want to sort of lay their mark, don't they? And they're bringing their own friends in as sales teams.
Yeah, that's what you see a lot of companies buy, and they bring totally different business, and they bring a lot of talent from this business because you trust them, you believes in them, and that you put them over here, and generally it's not going to work. And so I had a number of the executives in the grocery business that wanted to become a baseball executive, but I thought, man, that'll be a mistake. So I did not do that. I got in and found good leaders that taught me the baseball business.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That was great.
Great. And I have a question. What do you think about when you get up in the morning? What's that? Like, we all have a burning desire that keeps us motivated, and I'm curious for you, what's a thing that gets you out of bed and keeps you going in the morning?
set goals before I go to bed. Before I leave the office every day, I take out my yellow pad and I write 7 or 8 things that I need to do the next day. And I try to make appointments for various reasons with people. And I said, I'll be in your office at 9 o'clock tomorrow. So get up and say, I got to get going. He lives in Chicago. I got to get in Chicago by 9 o'clock today. So I put things in front of me that I don't have to hustle to get there. And so if I just lay in the bed or late, then I won't reach those objectives. So I try to write down, and I have an assistant, Brenda, and she's probably got for the next 8 or 10 weeks, almost every lunch is already filled in, and travel is filled in, and so I don't leave myself much for spontaneous. But you got to get up and get going. And like today, I had yours at 10 o'clock today, and I had another meeting, a conference call at 9:30 this morning, and I got another one at noon today. So set goals. Spiritual value to me is very important. It's got to be something bigger than who you are.
Yeah.
And have that. And then as you intertwine your day, you can grind yourself down to nothing when you're just talking about your business. I try to interject somebody different, a minister come by or some other bit. That's why I think it's pretty good from time to time to be on other boards that kind of humbles you sometimes. You say, they're pretty good. and I learned from those. We learn about moving around. That's why I like to move around and travel. Is to do that. So spiritually is important. Family, and then and when I was running McLane Company, I traveled 3 to 4 days every week. But I look forward to spending the weekend with my family or friends or doing something. I enjoyed it when I was younger playing tennis. I enjoyed it. Or I enjoyed what got me going. I jogged for over 40 years. And I jogged 3 or 4 times every week.
You usually do that in the morning?
Yeah, I do it like 4:30 or 5 in the morning. And people say, oh, you're doing it for your health. I said, baloney. I'm doing it for my mental health.
Yeah, keep your brain going.
You could go run for 2 or 3 miles and you came back, felt like you were sweating. You felt like $1,000. You felt good. And I thought, there are 2,000 people living I just ran in my neighborhood. I said, there are 2,000 people. I was the only guy out here doing this.
Yeah.
And so do things that get you really going, get you stirred up. And if you just talk business all day, it burns you out. But inject some other things. I get involved in a lot of different kinds of boards. I've been chairman of the United Way several times. I've been chairman of the Chamber of Commerce. I'm deeply involved with Salvation Army and other projects that help other people. That really gives you a good feeling.
Yeah. I know we're going to get you out of here in a second. Just wrap up with a couple of questions.
No, this is just my fun. Keep going.
Okay, we'll keep going.
I'll pay you.
I'll take that $500 back you charged me for putting a microphone closer to you earlier. The entrepreneurial opportunities have changed significantly in the past 20 years with the internet age, and the things that we deal with are in many ways much different than what you were dealing with in your retail business, wholesale business. But what inspires you about younger entrepreneurs today, and then what scares you about the younger generation of entrepreneurs?
It's more complicated today with technology, with computers, because there's so much data out there. When I started in the 1960s, I graduated with an MBA, and Michigan State didn't even have a computer. Can you imagine that? So you had to manually do everything. But then it was simpler than it is today. And just as your group here is literally all over the world, at odd hours. This is a complicated world today. But I try to say to all of the executives I work with, it takes very little extra effort to differentiate yourself from your competitors.
Yeah,
It really takes very little.
that's true.
effort
That's true.
to do that, and then expand your ideas. And there's not just one way to do things. There's several ways to do things.
Yeah. If you know, looking at the internet online opportunities that are out there today, say you had to start over and you couldn't, you know, get into the grocery business or baseball business, you had to get into some sort of online business or online type of entrepreneurial operation. What interests you? What do you think you would do?
I've thought about that a great deal, and you know, where chance is a lot of things. Getting into baseball was an executive in Houston calling me and asked me if I'd be interested in buying the Astros. I told him I was going to hang up on him. And I just thanked him and I said I had no interest whatsoever. And I got to think about it. I said, well, that might be interesting. I'll go to Houston and talk about it. So we happen across things. Very few of us are extremely creative. Look at Amazon. It's hard to remember now. You remember how they started? Books.
Books,
They
yeah.
sold books.
Yeah, books. They focused on that.
That was all it was. And look at it today. So it's getting ideas, and that's how we learn. Travel all you can, move around as much as you can. And your group here is all over the world. You ought to get them to express your thoughts and ideas. I've built grocery distribution centers literally all over the world, and it's just fascinating to do that and use ideas and principles. But there's always going to be a better idea to move into it. Just look at this, and I might try some kind of retailing. Not sure which. Might be the food business, which I would be partial to, or I think one of the better ones is I might get into, this is gonna sound crazy, in farming in produce. Everybody else wants to raise. I have a ranch and has a lot of cattle on it. That's interesting. It's not really mentally challenging. The produce business, and you say, why the produce business? Is because if you don't harvest that lettuce today, get it to the retail store in 4 or 5 days, it's worthless.
Yeah.
It's perishable.
Yeah.
So in the distribution business, we dealt with a lot of produce. And I told our executives in the produce business, I want you to visualize that I'm handing you a stick of dynamite with a fuse with it. And our goal is to get it to where they want that stick of dynamite before it blows up in our hand.
Yeah.
And so I would like something like the produce business, because that's healthier type foods. And how do we motivate people to eat this and enjoy it? And how can we improve the distribution? Because it's very costly to deal with produce.
Yeah.
So that might be something of interest.
Good answer.
But
Good
that's
answer.
just a multitude of ways.
There's so many, and that they change every couple of years. There's another huge opportunity to make money online. But we got one question that came up here that I thought was really interesting, and I'll let him back in. Adam Anderson, if you want to come back in, he's got a question about and Adam gets some crazy ideas. He wants to create the first whiskey distillery on the moon, and and he also
to come to Texas, he might make a lot of money here.
Yeah, I think he's been down around that way. And then he's got a question. I'll let him ask it, but he's got a question about creating a sports team with zero gravity, or a sports event. And Adam, come on in and ask your question, buddy.
Right. Well, yes. So we are doing some interesting things. I've found that I'm fascinated by space and space economy and space manufacturing, and what we're leading with is entertainment and luxury. And so to me, the economy follows what people are interested in, and people love sports. And so I went through my head and was like, well, all right, we can put an inflatable arena on a Dragon capsule, and I can throw some guys up there, and we can live stream it. And a lot of what you're saying resonates with me, because I have literally no idea how to do any of the things I just told you, except I know I'll figure it out. And what my question is you almost answered it already, but if you can explore it a little bit more, moving into something that's absolutely outside of your wheelhouse, something that other people might think is crazy, and you have 100% confidence in yourself that you're going to do it and that you're going to be great at it. How do you navigate that? Or better yet, what advice would you give me to start a space sporting event?
Okay. I touched on this before. I encouraged our executives, and in McLane, we got brilliant ideas from people that had only been with us 2 or 3 years. They said, why not do this? And remember, I said before, I wanted people to come up with ideas like you're talking about. Is it honest and honorable, and is it legal? You got to figure that out first, because there are a lot of bad things you can do. Number 2, don't bet the farm on it.
Right.
Don't bet everything on it. As I said, if you got some wealth, don't spend more than 10 or 15% on it. So if it doesn't work, you have the courage to walk away from it. And then if it works, then start talking about how do I expand it. One of the lessons that a consultant told me when I bought a baseball team, he said, don't fall in love with baseball.
Interesting.
Don't fall in love with baseball. Don't fall in love with the game. You'll lose your perspective. And don't fall in love with players. It's awful easy to fall in love with a great player. Said, boy, he's everything. He said, don't do that. Your job is owning the team, and your real objective is to get 50,000 people to 81 home games. That's hard to do. So you've got to focus, and I don't want you to take wrong, but this consultant said, you're really in the entertainment business. You're not in the baseball business.
That's right.
You get great players, but if you don't get the fans to support you and come to the games and pay 4 times for a beer there that they can go to the grocery store and buy, he said, you're in the entertainment business. So that's what I really focus on. I could have hired baseball people that could figure out who's going to be a good relief pitcher. I was in the entertainment business. And so one of the first things we were in the Astrodome, which was the first dome stadium in the world, creative thing. But it wasn't a fun place for baseball. So I felt and started working, and we built a brand new ballpark in downtown Houston. So don't fall in love with the business. Don't fall in love with players. Or I've seen in business, where you got a really hotshot executive out there. Don't fall in love with him either. But keep your mind on the big objective.
Nice.
And don't be afraid of making mistakes.
Well, we got to be careful
and
and
encourage people to make mistakes.
Well, I got to be a little careful about mistakes in outer space.
Yeah,
harsher consequences for that.
In baseball, we signed several people for $100 million over 5 years. You would never do that in business, because they can break a leg, they can have an elbow surgery, they can do a bunch of things, and you sure can't take insurance on it, or their skills diminish. You've seen it in every sport. So you got to be daring somewhere. That's where entrepreneurs come from.
It's very true. Very true.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay. Tim has a question. Drayton. Tim, you want to hop in? He wants to ask about entrepreneurial parents and raising children.
Yeah, sure. You talked about growing up in the family business and some of the things you learned from your dad. And then you talked about having boys and wanting to keep them there in Temple. I'm curious what advice you have for those of us on this call that have, or they're listening to the podcast that have kids today. We run various entrepreneurial ventures. What would you tell us about advice for parenting our kids?
Set values. Faith is important in our family, and so we got our children involved in the church and Bible study and youth groups and things like that. Then make sure your children don't just have a small clique of friends, but they have a wide variety. I'm a big believer in public schools. I went to a public school. My sons went to a public school, and my grandchildren are going to public school. Because public school is a mix of what life is all about. And I think public schools are really, really important. But give good values to your children, and then introduce your children to 2 or 3 adults that you know that have a big perspective in life, and take them to have lunch with those guys and expose them to the good and evil part of life where they're not figuring it out on their own. The one beautiful thing my dad did, never asked me if I was going to come in the family business. Never asked me that. I had to ask him for the job. My 2 sons, my wife and I told them that we would pay for their college. But when they graduated, they had to get their first job on their own. We weren't going to help them. And they had to work somewhere for 5 years and whatever they wanted to do. And if they ever wanted to work with us, they had to call us. We weren't going to call them. I've just seen too many children get pushed into businesses they really didn't like. Life is wonderful. Let them get out on their own and figure out what they want to do.
Great advice. Thank you.
Shake them or say, I'm doing this for you. They'll say, baloney, I didn't want that.
They said, no, you're not, Dad. No, you're not. Yes, I am. Drayton, I got to ask, we're going to get you out of here in a second, but I got to ask the question that everybody has to ask you, and I'm sure you've been asked it a million times. What's great about having $1 billion and what's horrible about having $1 billion?
It's the emails and phone calls you get every day. Or charities, they are galore. And, you know, we do a wide variety of charitable contributions in both church and schools and others, and narrowing it down to where, you know, you can't solve every problem and you can't be in every social need. So you have to pick a few that you think are important to you and you work through those. But you have to say no to a lot of people, and they'll say, well, you've got money, why can't you help us in this cause? So that's being responsible. The Lord blesses you, and you're responsible. So you have to give back, and we believe in that strongly. That's one of the things. Is to, in social groups, just be accepted for who you are. And you want to be around people that want to be around you. They don't want to try to influence. When you get that airplane, it was on your wall back there, people are going to want you to say, why don't we go to Las Vegas this weekend? And you say, they don't really like me. They like our airplanes. So get around socially people who accept you for who you are.
Good point. What do you think? What's one book every entrepreneur should read, Drayton?
Oh boy, that's how about a very scholarly book that was written about 20 years ago? Who Moved My Cheese?
It's a good one.
Have any of you ever read that?
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's about 20 pages. It's all about a mouse. Read that book. It doesn't take you 30 minutes. Read that book. That'll
That's a
show you how
timeless
life
one.
is. Sir?
That's a timeless classic for sure. Yeah, I
You
agree.
bet. And I did make sure my children read it. Our executives, about every 3 years, they say, "Oh, not again." And we'll have a 2-hour lesson. What we learned from this? And we'll have some young executives that will give us a new insight. Do things that are important to you. And as a Christian, the Bible is by far the most important thing. When I go to a men's Sunday school class every week, and it's amazing what you'll learn and your perspective, and just be who you are, and don't have all of these things you have hanging around you. My car is 12 or 13 years old.
Really?
And yeah, and I enjoy it. And because everybody passes me going so fast, look at that old man. He's so, and I don't get speeding tickets.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't pull an old car over.
Yeah.
Be who you are and maintain relationships, and then invest your time wisely. That's you. Back to the question: why do you get up? I try it. It works for me, but others have different ways. Really schedule yourself to. You got to be here and here and here. And Brenda, my assistant, threatened me that I was in another meeting at 9:30. I better have my rear end in here. She was going to shoot me.
So we'll get you wrapped up so you can make it on time.
No. That was 9:30 with one, and yours was at 10.
Oh, okay.
And get an assistant that says you can't do that. This is what you've committed to do.
Yeah.
Overcommit yourself. We get in traps when we have too much free time.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I can appreciate that answer. Who are the younger entrepreneurs out there that you keep your eyes on that you think we should watch from a younger generation?
What's the biggest corporation in the history of the world?
Well, Catholic Church.
No.
Or
the biggest business in the history of the world, and I'll do it. It's Walmart.
Walmart. Yeah.
But it's in a small town in Northwest
Arkansas,
back in the mountains.
Yeah.
They're gonna do over 600 billion this year.
Wow.
And it was started by one guy, and he didn't start until 1962. Doug McLane is the CEO of Walmart, and they've got 1.9 million employees. They'd like to do that, and they got them all over the world. And he runs it from a small town in Bentonville, Arkansas, and he has a degree from the University of Arkansas. I've known him for a long time. He came up through the logistics side of Walmart, and you just look at him, and I'm just amazed how they run something that monstrous all over the world. So he is really, really a capable person that you should look at.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of other good executives. And most good executives, I give them credit for, are entrepreneurs. You know, Doug didn't start Walmart. That was started by Sam Walton and David Gleiss. There was 3 others before Doug. Doug stepped in a big company that had unbelievable momentum. The real neat guy is the guy that started with nothing.
Yeah.
And built it from scratch.
Yeah.
And there's those guys everywhere.
Yeah. There's something to say about that skill set and then that type of entrepreneur that just comes from nothing and builds something really incredible. And
there are a lot of great executives that get into companies that are super well run.
Yeah.
And they got skills and build, but I love the guys that started with little or nothing and look what he built.
Yeah. Actually, our friend Paul, like he was an orphan, right? Started off with nothing and built his empire as well. Yep. Drayton, this has been. Go ahead.
You had Paul on this program?
Yeah, I tried to get him on quite a few times and he keeps rejecting me. I don't know. He referred you. He said, Drayton, you should go on this show, but I'm not going to go on. He keeps telling me I have nothing to talk about, but
He
I know,
does. He
I
does.
know.
And been successful in several businesses. He created two from scratch.
Yeah. Yeah. And you guys were partners there for a while too, right?
Yes.
Yep.
He had a convenience store. So I've learned a great deal. You guys have fired me up. I got
Good.
to start working harder.
Yeah.
I love that you're in Spain and your group is literally all over the world.
Yeah, that's the age that we live in. It's so nice because we're not just connected by local communities. We're really connected by like-minded interests, and we can do things on a regular basis. Like, Paul came with us to Morocco, and we had a group of us. We went to Morocco, and it's from people from all over, California, Canada, Europe, and so it's pretty neat to be a part of this. So we're at time here, and I want to give you a huge thank you for coming on the show. It's so great to pick your mind, and thanks for letting these guys on the podcast as well pick your brain and get some great wisdom out of you. I know you have a bunch of projects going on. Is there anything that we can do or keep in the back of our minds or the listeners can do that could support you or, reach out and help you and collaborate in some way? Just let us know if there's anything that you're looking for support in and we can do.
Guys, can I give support? Stay humble, no matter where you are. Stay humble. Don't get caught up in yourself and stay within a group that keeps you humble.
Yes.
That you need to readjust. I live in a relatively small town, and my wife and I work hard not to stand out, and we stay humble and don't get caught up, and then really you live your life, really separate yourself and set higher and higher standards for yourself.
Good point. Good point. Okay. Anything we can look out for to support you in any other way besides being humble and setting high standards?
Been our friend and keep charging. And it's entrepreneurs that create a new world.
Yeah. Very true.
You ever look at your iPhone and it should have been invented by AT&T?
No, I've never thought about that, but that's a really good point. Yeah.
They had Bell Labs, they had all this research. Just an entrepreneur in California invented it. And who else did it steal? The camera.
Yeah.
Kodak is bankrupt and out of business. Kodak should have invented that. They didn't. And you're just, or Xerox should have invented. Computers have eliminated copy machine pretty much. It's an inventive world.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
all right. We're going to wrap up there. Drayton, if you just hang on a sec, you and I are going to pop into another room. Listeners, if you hang on a sec, Derek's got some stuff for you guys. And again, Drayton, thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate your time.
I made it fun. You got a good group there.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I like them as well. So we're going to wrap up there, listeners. Thank you guys. And we'll see you on the next episode. Goodbye, everybody.